Joining us live now from Athens is a former Greek finance minister, Yannos Papantoniou. He joins me now. Thank you very much for speaking to us. So the government's main task for 2011 will be boosting tax revenue. That's the government's main task for the coming year. Just how difficult is that going to be?
Well, it is very difficult, as you know, because the country is in a very deep recession. So my guess is that just tax collection will not be enough to close the gap. The government should pursue more dynamic policies to engineer a recovery of the economy during 2011. I think the growth and recovery part of the problem is bigger than the deficit problem. Unless growth recovers, then the deficit targets cannot be met.
You mentioned growth and recovery there. Would further tax increases deepen the recession?
Exactly, that's my fear. I think the memorandum is wrong on this level. I think the memorandum is too much focused on deficits and not enough on recovery and growth. And this is the responsibility of the Greek government to cover this gap. Usually, memorandums of this nature do the same mistake. But as you know, markets are clever. If markets believe that the Greek economy is in deep depression, they will not be convinced that they will recover their money. So recovery for Greece is equally important than cutting further the deficit in 2011.
So are you expecting extra cutbacks in addition to the cuts in wages, pensions and investments that we've already had?
I would prefer, instead of seeing new tax rises, to see deeper cuts in public expenditures so far as the waste is concerned in places like hospitals, like state provisions and other public corporations where there is too much waste. If the government shows more courage in cutting down waste, it may cover the shortfall in revenues more easily. And then, of course, as I said, must pursue a more dynamic program in terms of privatizations, of market liberalizations and deregulation, so as to create the conditions for faster recovery than what is envisaged in the memorandum with international organizations.
And tax collection is certainly a significant element in terms of the government boosting its revenue to bring down its deficit. What needs to happen for the government to succeed in improving tax collection? Because right now, nearly 10% of the Greek population owes the government 30 billion euros in back taxes.
Exactly. The question of tax collection implies the need for professional approach of the matter. I think the electronic surveillance is very, very important, and also tax inspections must be made much harsher. But of course, these measures will not produce immediate results. So immediately what is important is to cut back spending on wasteful projects, and secondly, of course, as I said, pursue a more consistent and dynamic policy to engineer growth.
So what is the biggest challenge facing the government in the next 6 months?
I believe that the biggest problem for the government is to to convince the markets that it has a vision and a plan to get the economy out of the deep depression it finds it now. This is the biggest challenge.
And it's interesting that you talk about growth and recovery and the fact that the government needs to focus more on that. In a report, Alpha Bank says that further pursuit of fiscal adjustment makes no sense without an effective reduction of tax evasion and substantive widening of the country's tax base. What do you make of that?
I fully agree. The tax base is really narrow, and whatever the government does to extend the tax base is very important. All I'm saying is that this is not enough. It is not enough to raise taxes. One should cut back waste more vigorously, and secondly, it should pursue, as I said, a more dynamic policy for economic recovery. The vision and the plan must have three parts. Curbing tax evasion is just one. Curbing waste is a second, and helping recovery is the third. Only when the government achieves a balance between the three objectives, only then the markets will be convinced that they will get their money back.
But just how difficult is it going to be to achieve that balance?
I think it is very difficult. Now the Greek economy is in a difficult position, but I believe that if from now to the autumn of next year, in the next 12 months, the government pursues such a balanced and dynamic approach, then the tides can be turned and spreads may start to get down, and by the end of 2012, Greece may return to the markets. If not, then we shall have problems.
And of course, a key part of turning things around in Greece will be foreign direct investment. Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao said that China plans to buy Greek bonds once Greece begins tapping international markets for funding again. Your thoughts on that? A positive development for Greece, yes?
I didn't get your question, I'm sorry.
I was asking you about the prospect of China buying Greek bonds once Greece goes back to the markets.
Right.
Is that a positive development for the country?
I think it is a very positive development. It is a vote of confidence in the Greek economy, and I believe it will help. Of course, by itself, it will not be enough for Greece to return to the markets, but it is a positive factor.
Mr. Yannos Papantoniou, former finance minister of Greece, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.